Hey there, gang. I wanted to talk to you today about the greatest studio unit I've ever had the pleasure and good fortune to work with. I've featured them before on my YouTube page individually, but I want to talk to you about them as a unit because that's what really matters in a studio, yeah? So we called them the Great American Rhythm Section. What happened was I moved to Nashville. I was beckoned here by Bob Olson, who is a legendary Motown engineer and producer. And as soon as I got here, the first session I ever did was the JB All-Stars meet the Motown Funk Brothers. That was insane. And I'm sitting there playing percussion with Jack Ashford and Jabo's playing drum. It was just insane. But soon after, Bob mentioned to me, he's like, hey, I heard from Tom Dowd, and Tom Dowd says that, Ed Green is living here now, and Bob Babbitt's here, as you know, and that we should put them together with Reggie Young. Now, you've heard Reggie's playing Son of a Preacher Man, Suspicious Minds, Neil Diamond's Memphis record, just on and on and on and on and on. I mean, Drift Away by Dobie Gray, all that snaky, slinky stuff is Reggie Young. He also played on many, many, many country hits. So he's like, we got to get them together with Reggie. I'm like, sounds like a good idea. And at the same time, I had been doing some publishing demos down on Music Row. And if the publisher really liked what you did, they'd run you over to Sony Studios and call in the A-team, which, back then was Eddie Bayers, Dave Hungate, John Willis, Russ Paul, Catherine Marks, Brent Mason, yada, yada, yada. And when I was doing these sessions, I realized, I'm like, oh, wow, I really like the way Catherine Marks plays. She's got a real delicate but firm sensibility. She's always playing exactly what the song needs. She doesn't play too hard. She doesn't play too soft. She's just really intuitive. I really like the way she played. And at the same time, I was like, oh my God, Dave Hungate's out of his mind. Like, the guy is unbelievable. Like, listen to Lowdown and Lodi Shuffle for Boz Scaggs, and of course Toto and hundreds of other. He's on some Neil Diamond hit. Anyway, it goes on and on. So I said to Bob, I said, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we put together a unit and we get Catherine on keyboards, we get Dave Hungate in, but of course Dave Hungate plays bass and Babbitt plays bass. Well, no problem, because Dave Hungate plays like a million different instruments. The guy's amazing. In fact, he's probably, I would say, my top 3 rhythm guitar players of all time. He taught me so much about rhythm guitar and playing to the hi-hat and laying back and leaving the first eighth note off and just where it sits. I mean, the guy's a genius. So we put together Catherine on keyboards. Bob Babbitt would play bass, and Babbitt was all like worried. He's like, oh, but Hungate's here. And I'm like, and Dave Hungate goes, Bob, you're my hero. I'm just going to play guitar. And Babbitt was like, whoa. So everybody was totally into this. And we had Reggie playing guitar, Ed Green from Steely Dan, Jeff Beck, Marvin Gaye, Barry White, Glenn Campbell. I mean, come on drums. And we put this little unit together and called it the Great American Rhythm Section. And I got to tell you, yeah, I was the producer and I put the sessions together and I found the artists, and in many cases I wrote the songs or cultivated songs that we brought in and did for certain artists. But it was going to school. I was going to school every day with this unit, and I finally got up the nerve to play with them, to play the other guitar parts, and like if there was like wah-wah needed or a specialty thing or particularly acoustic guitar, I would play that. And I remember saying to Reggie one time, I'm like, I just couldn't believe some of this stuff he was playing. And he could never play the same thing exactly the same way twice. It's a funny story, a little side note. When he got inducted into the Musicians Hall of Fame, or it was Country Music Hall of Fame, he calls me up. It's like, hey, man, do you know how Drift Away goes? And I'm like, yeah, I know how Drift Away goes, Reg. He goes, can you play it? And I'm like, yeah, I think I could play it. And I'm like, why? He goes, well, can you show me how it is? Just tell me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You played it. He goes, I played it once. Like he would just literally play those crazy riffs and things like once, and then that was it. He wouldn't play it the same way twice. So I got to play alongside of him. And at one point I said, hey, Reg, can you show me some of that stuff you're doing, this slinky? He's like, well, heck, Ed, it's just chords. And I'm like, yes, I guess it is. It's just chords, Reg. Sure it is. And, you know, Dave Hungate plays like 12, all these different instruments. So, you know, you could be like, hey, we're going to put, it would be really great if we had a banjo on this. Or Dave would be like, hey, I can put some trombone on this or some clarinet or I could play. I'm like, what? And so that's what it was like every day. Ed Green was a rock. I mean, you put a click track on there and you could just forget about it because Ed Green's your click track, right? Like, it was just the most rock solid. It was like, you know, even Steely Dan couldn't grid this stuff. And at one point, Dave Hungate said to me, this was very early on when I was thinking of playing with them, and he goes, okay, Ed, he goes, but if you're 100th of a millisecond off, you're going to screw us up. No pressure. So that was what it was like. They were so in sync, and their feel was so locked in and groovy and slinky and just, I mean, you didn't really want to mess with it, which is one of the reasons I didn't even really want to play with them. But I got lucky a few times. I snuck in there. They didn't notice. So it was going to school. I had many, many, many lessons working with them. I don't think I've learned more about professional recording and studio craft and studio behavior, which is also really important, than I did from working with the Great American Rhythm Section with Ed Green, Bob Babbitt, Dave Hungate, Reggie Young, and Catherine Marks. Just blew me away. And then later on, I think the last couple of years of sessions we did, I think Bobby from the Memphis Boys moved. He was the keyboard player in the Memphis Boys. He moved to Nashville. And so we would have like him playing piano and Catherine playing organ and vice versa. It was amazing. I mean, I have this one track that's never been released where I said to Bobby and to Reggie, I said, hey, can you just like do some sort of intro thing on this? And they were like, what do you want? You know, I'm like, some sort of like, you know, sprightly, bouncy, but pretty little, you know, intro. And they're like, okay. Well, and Reggie's like, you want to show me what you want? I'm like, so I would sing something. And then they're like, okay. So we just sat there, all of us, all these amazing musicians just sat there and watched them. It was like the most unbelievable unspoken language you could ever imagine, because they didn't say a word, but they would like play notes off of each other as if it was already preconceived and constructed and composed. It was amazing. Like Bobby would go ding, and Reggie would go ding, 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 and then Bobby would go down, down, down. Reggie would be down, 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 ba-da-down, and Bobby would be like bow, down, bow. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I mean, it's that easy? No, it's the Great American Rhythm Section, and it was an honor. A privilege. I still retain as much as I can from those days. Sadly, Babbitt's gone and Reggie's gone, but for 12 years we got to do this, and it was just remarkable. So I wanted to share that with you. If you have any questions about any of them, I got to hear all kinds of stories from all of them, from their backgrounds, from their history and experiences, and I'd be happy to share them with you or answer any questions. The Great American Rhythm Section. Unbelievable.